Authors Press.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Richardson, and I'm from Authors Press. Today, I'm gathered here with McClain, the author of Happiness in Quantum Leaps, De-Stressing Without Drugs. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your book as well?
Yeah, my name's McClain. I'm a retired aerospace engineer. I was working for Hughes Helicopter, McDonnell Douglas, and Boeing. So that's my history. And as far as the book is really, it's trying to get rid of the number one killer around the world, which is mental stress. So my book tries to help in that domain and trying to help people de-stress themselves. And my book teaches how to use our body parts more efficiently, because we're not taught in school. And so my book teaches how our body, our mind, and our energy, that everything is made of, according to physicists, that they're made of, and that because we're not taught in school that they're connected as one. I teach in my book that they're connected, and that we are all connected as one, as energy, invisible energy. And if you're religious, it's called spirit of God. But anyways, that we're all talking about the same thing, and we're all fighting about nomenclature. So my book teaches how do we become, as human beings, more efficient human beings. So
okay,
that's what the book is about.
So your book is very much a self-help book for people.
Yes.
Okay, I see. Could you tell us a little bit about what inspired the idea for your book?
Actually, it was my research for me, in my own life. I had a brain tumor when I was 26, and my doctors told me I was going to have for the rest of my life. And then he said, you got to take these horse pills for the rest of your life. And I was like having a panic attack. I didn't want to take the meds. So I kept thinking, there must be another way. There must be another way. In my, privately, I didn't want my doctors to know. I was just asking this question. And an answer came to me. I heard a voice in my head that all ailments, the source is thought. And I thought, oh, the source is thought. So what would happen if I reversed engineer this and figured out what the thought was that was creating the tumor? Maybe if I got rid of the thought, would the tumor go away? And so that was the beginning of my research. And so then I thought, well, I'll go hire a thought doctor, which is a psychiatrist. So I hired a thought doctor, and then I was working with a psychiatrist for about a year, and she wants to give me meds. And I'm like, no, I don't want drugs. And then what happened was I found a year later, I fired her and found a life coach. And through my life coach, she said, most of us, we generate 3,200 thoughts a day, and we need to, but we don't know how to control it. And she said, and we don't know what we're thinking. And so, because we're so automatic. So she said, you need to write a journal and start writing down your thoughts so you become aware of it. So that's what I did. And so anyway, so I was reverse engineering, trying to figure out what this thought was that was creating the tumor. And through my journaling, I had this reoccurring thought. So I did what my life coach said. I had this reoccurring thoughts about how much I hated men. And that was from trauma. When I was a kid, my father used to beat us up all the time. And so I made a rule in my head when I was young that all men were jerks, because I figured, oh, they're all the same. And so what happened was my life coach was trying to get rid of that anger and hate that was in my heart and in my head. And so she said, she asked me the question, because my rule was all men were jerks. And she said, is that a true statement? All 3 billion people beat you up? And I said, no. just my dad. And so then she had me write a forgiveness letter to my dad. She goes, I need you to change your negative thought from positive thought. You're stuck with this negative thought about, your anger with your dad. And so she said, write a letter to him. It's not going to be mailed to him. It's just for you. And so I wrote a letter, and it's kind of like data dumping. And so I wrote all the negative stuff about how much I hated my dad. I hate you because you're a jerk because you beat up my brothers and sisters and my mom. You're on and on with the negative stuff. And then I thought the only positive thing I could think of was, but because of you, I would never be born. And because of you, my kids will never be born. And so that shifted my way of looking at my world, my universe. And what happened was, once I changed my thinking from negative to positive thinking, my tumor went away. And so that was the beginning of my research, was learning about that and learning more about love and forgiveness and all that, and about God. Once I got God at 100%, everything in my life started kind of going a positive way. I went from being almost divorced to falling in love with my husband. So that's what I teach, and helping others heal themselves. So that's what I teach in my book, and that's how it inspired me, is talking to this voice I call God's voice, and I teach people how to hear God.
Okay, I see. So your book is definitely based on your personal experiences then?
Yes, definitely.
What would you say is the significance of the title? What does it mean?
I was searching for happiness, and I was trying to look for a title that meant a lot for me, because once I found happiness, which most of us are looking for, de-stressing without drugs. I was stressed at work, and once I figured out and got rid of my negative thoughts, I did it naturally without drugs. And so so I got the title after I wrote the book, that that what's common in most people is that everybody's searching for happiness and for love, and that's what my book is all about.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see that and feel that from the story you told me earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you said you needed to do research for this book. How much research would you say went into the development of this story?
About 15 years. Because the book, I prove the existence of God using simple physics, and I teach people how to use and work with God, because we're not taught in school. And I kind of merge science and religion together, because my background is, like I said before, I was an aerospace engineer for 25 years. So my book is kind of merging the two together. And because we're not taught in school how to use our body parts more efficient, that they work together, because they're connected as one, and how they work together. That's because when you go to your primary doctor, they only treat the symptoms of the body. When you go to a psychiatrist, they only, treat the mind. But the number one killer around the world is actually mental stress. And I talk about that in my book. And there's a lot of suicides, a lot of people who are just not happy. And so what I teach is, that's the main reason for that, is because none of us, most people do not know how their body works, their body, their mind, and their energy, and how they're connected together and how they work together. And so I explain how the three work together best when they are in positive alignment.
Okay, yeah, and I can definitely see, you said that you combined science and religion for this book. I can definitely hear it as you explain it, where the influences for both of those components come in.
Yes, because we're not taught in school, and that's because scientists haven't discovered it. Well, for one thing, scientists haven't discovered thought yet as a form of energy, even though they say everything is energy. So that is a big problem. So religion's kind of more advanced. So we kind of have to go to religion, because they teach us how to control our thinking, that positive thinking is better than negative thinking, and how to work with God, the universe, the energy, the spirit, they call it spirits, physicists call it energy, that everything is made of.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I can definitely see that.
yeah.
I can also feel that there's some psychology, like some inspirations from psychology in this book as well.
I may sound like that, but I'm not a psychologist. I don't, but it is about your psyche.
Yeah, and it
But
definitely does.
But it's the natural way that our body parts are connected and how it's used. And so that's what I teach. I'm against traditional psychology because I've been there, done that, and all they want to do is drug people, and it doesn't work because people, when what they do is, let me tell you a story how what happened with me when I was working with a psychiatrist when I got my tumor. And about 6 months into seeing my psychiatrist, I didn't want to take her meds, right? So 6 months into seeing her, my boyfriend at the time committed suicide, and he shot himself, and I was going crazy in my mind. I couldn't stop the thinking. I was feeling guilty. And so that was the only one time that I did take the medicine from the doctor, my psychiatrist. She gave me tranquilizers and to make me stop the thinking because I was having panic attack. And so I ended up in Venice Beach somehow. I didn't know how long I've been driving, and the drugs that they give kids today and their patients literally make you stop thinking, but you're out of control. And so once I woke up from my trance from the drug, I ended up in Venice Beach, and I'm like, oh my God, these things are dangerous. Not only are they addictive, but they're extremely dangerous for anybody who takes them. They're very addictive. And they cause suicide. That's the other problem with taking drugs, synthetic drugs, to make you stop thinking. So my book really teaches the natural way of how we not think so much so that we don't kill ourselves from heart attacks, cancers, tumors, etc., suicides. And so because we're not taught in school, again, because one of the problems I discovered is that scientists haven't discovered thought yet as a form of energy. That's why they can't teach us how to control our thinking. You have to go to religion for that because they're a lot more advanced.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. They definitely focus more on the power of thought than the power of what you can feel and touch.
Yes, yes.
Could you describe your ideal reader or your target audience?
It's really for anybody, definitely for religious people, all religions, it doesn't matter, because I get them at 100%. And the reason why I need people to get at 100% is that being a 50% God believer may or may not work to heal yourselves. Because in the Bible, it talks about God, Jesus healing this person, that person. And I'm like, okay, I've got this brain tumor growing in my brain. How am I going to, how do I fix that? But anyways, heal that naturally. And so my book is really for the reason why I would start with the religious people is because they're already kind of like God, kind of like when I had my tumor, I didn't realize that I was only a 50% believer. I thought I was at 100%, but because I didn't understand the process of how our body, mind, and energy or spirit works together best when they're in sync and positive alignment, I wasn't really efficient at using my body parts, really, because we're not really taught. Once I got it, I'm like, oh my God. And I got God at 100%. Like I said, 50% doesn't work. Okay. Once I got God 100%, that was when I started healing my relationships, my body, my family. That's how healing begins.
Yes, definitely. You have to put all of your mind, body, and spirit together.
And then anybody else who's like searching, the book is also good for for people who are just searching for answers because they're just confused. Because when you go to school, they say God doesn't exist. When you go to church, they said there's only one way. But, they're kind of confusing everybody. And so most of us are just confused. And so I merged the two, and I prove that we're all really talking about the same thing. We're just using different names, and we're all fighting about nomenclatures. They're different religions against each other. We're all just using different words. And and in my book, I said, just stop. We need to stop fighting, for the sake of the next generation. We need to just stop fighting about nomenclature, because we're all talking about the same thing. You could call it universe, you could call it God, you could call it whatever, Allah, whatever you want. So it's for anybody and everybody who's searching for answers. That's what the book is for.
Yeah, and I can see that. Would you say you have to be religious to read this book, or would that not be necessary?
It's not necessary. It's for anybody, because if you're just a science believer, then, like I said in my book, I said, call it universe. Don't call it God if that bothers you. But let everybody else, you use whatever they want to call the all, whatever the all is for you. Just be at peace with that, because when you Google the different names of God in the Bible, it comes out to anywhere from 650 to 850 names just in the Bible alone. And my friend who's a Muslim, she said they have a saying that God has 1,000 names, and then there's scientists who call it the universe, the all. So just use whatever word
whatever is most comfortable for you.
For them, yeah. We just have to accept whatever else everybody else calls it. Otherwise, we won't have peace. If you keep thinking, because I had a Christian friend, oh no, Muslims don't believe in God. I'm like, what? Yeah, they believe in Allah. And then I Google on their book, and I'm like, oh no, God's name is Allah. So they do believe in God. They just have 1,000 names, just like Christians. They just have a whole bunch of names for. It's like me in my book. I said, it's just like me having multiple names. I'm mommy to my kids. I'm honey to my children. I'm Ara to some people. Mrs. McClain to some. Some people when you go groceries call me ma'am or miss. I've got a whole bunch of names. And in fact, I don't know anybody who's got just one name. Even our dog has at least 10 names.
Yeah, and I definitely see what you're saying about that. What would you say your intentions are for this book? Like, why did you write this book?
I did not want to write the book. For one, okay? God asked me to write the book. I was asked to write the book. When I got God at 100%, I asked the question, why isn't there just one book that explained all this so easily? Because when I was doing research for myself, I'm trying to attain mental peace. I was taking all sorts of training classes by experts, and how to think better and all this stuff and I was reading hundreds of books, and I was visiting all sorts of religions and all that in my research for mental peace. But once I got God at 100%, I'm like, oh my God, why is there just one book? And I heard a voice in my head, you write it. And I'm like, no. I became like Moses. No, not me. Pick somebody else. And like, why don't you pick my brother? He's a Baptist preacher. Why don't you pick him? I'm not a theologist. No, I want you. And I'm like, why me? And the voice came back with, because you ask questions. You don't accept whatever anybody else says. And until you ask questions, until you understand it. And I'm like, so I asked so the reason why I wrote the book is because he asked me.
what kind of impact do you want this book to have on your readers?
Well, I'm hoping, one, to teach them about God, how God the universe, and how we are really naturally supposed to work with it. Because again, we're not taught in school. Scientists haven't even discovered thought yet as a form of energy. So what I teach is how our body parts actually work naturally, our body, our mind, and our energy, that everything that physicists say is everything is made of. And if you're religious, it's the same thing as spirit. It's what they call it. So how does our body, mind, and energy, or spiritual energy, work together best? And that's what's missing in our education, why so many people are stressed out, why so many people are sick and committing suicides. And I'm hoping that this book will help those people that are suffering.
Yeah, okay, I see. So your intention is to fill in the potholes along the way.
Yes, what's missing in our education. And because I use science, and I even have pictures to make it easy on people. I'm a visual person, so I created pictures so that people get it at 100%. Like I said, it may or may not work if you're only a 50% God believer. As far as healing is concerned. My cousin, for example, in 07, 09, she lost her job. She was a realtor when the economy tanked. And she was a realtor, and her husband was also they build houses. And so he was also in real estate, because when the real estate market dropped, nobody's buying homes, and so they didn't need his work. And so both of them kind of, lost their jobs during that time between like around 09. And what happened was, so because they lost their jobs, they weren't generating any money, and so she was stressed out about how do we keep our house, because they drove a Hummer and a Mercedes, so how do we keep that cars, and how do I feed the children, that. She was stressing out, and she got breast cancer soon after she got sick from the stress. And the doctors, did the chemo, everything. And she was a Christian, but she was what I call a 50% believer, because even though she went to church, she thought she was the source. She didn't understand the process at 100%. And after her chemo, she was trying to go back to work to try to, generate money. And what happened was she passed away from the cancer, and she was only 39 years old. So what I'm hoping to do with this book is just help as many people as possible. Like, you guys are doing it all wrong. This is how it works. This is how we naturally work with God, the universe, the process. So it's about the process. It's understanding how to work with it, with nature, as how we were born to use our body parts. That's what the book is all about.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that you put all of your everything into this book.
Yes.
Would you say there are any parts to this book that you have a deeper and more significant connection to? Could we talk about that?
Yes. I think explaining what God is, because I never understood what God was until because I kept asking, well, what are you? What are you? If you want me to write this book, I need you to answer my questions that I don't. So he would help me, and a Bible verse popped out. I don't remember the exact Bible verse, but it said, God creates the visible and invisible. And when I saw that, I go, that's it? Just no one explained that before. So once I saw that Bible verse, I thought, I created a formula. God creates visible and invisible. That's only three variables. So I even have a God formula. God is equal. I even created a mathematical formula. So it's only three variables. Anybody could remember it. God is equal to visible and invisible. And the visible part is what scientists call matter. That's all the things that you could see. They're made of matter. And the invisible part is what physicists call energy. And so the way I explain it to people is, if you were to ask a doctor what you're made of, he's going to say, well, you're made of blood and bones. Well, what's that made of? Molecules. Well, what's that made of? Atoms. Well, what's that made of? Electrons and protons. And what's that made of? If you ask a physicist, he's going to say it's made of invisible energy. So that's the invisible part. Well, energy is defined in physics as something that can never be created and it can't be destroyed. So, okay, if you can't be destroyed at this level, that another word for that is eternal, which religious people call Spirit of God. So they're really talking about the same thing. So from the outside were all these objects that you could see and touch, people, your cars, your money, that kind of, your TV sets, your telephone. Those are all objects that you could see. That's called matter in science. But if you had a strong microscope and you were looking inside yourself, what you're made of, what everything is made of, it's invisible energy and it can't be destroyed. Therefore, it's all eternal. The religion was right all along. Way before scientists even discovered energy. They discovered energy 2,000 years after Jesus. So that's why religion is more advanced than science. That's why we have to go to religion for answers, more so than science. Like I said, they haven't even discovered thought yet, that it exists as invisible energy. And what does the Bible say? Well, in the beginning was word. These are words are thoughts. Thoughts in the Bible said God used words to create his Garden of Eden. Well, that's how we create today, using our thoughts. And so I teach about creation. How do you create your own perspective of your own universe? It's by designing it using your thoughts.
Okay, I see. And would you say that's why you connect to this portion of the book more than the rest? Because you were able to discover who God or what God really is?
Yes, I love that section because because of my background's engineering and math. I'm like, oh, it's just three variables. I'm like, how easy is that? And I explained the three variables, very, very easily. And I use pictures too, so it should cover everybody.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool. Earlier you said that you did not want to write this book. Could you tell us what your biggest struggle is while you were writing it?
I think my reluctance to writing the book, because I did not feel, I told, my conversation with God was, look, I'm not an author, I'm not a physicist, and I proved the existence of God using simple physics. So I was kind of reluctant with that part, because nobody's been able to do a simple book on the God factor, like, how do you explain God easily? And when people read my book, they really get God at 100%, and that's the whole point too, because I use simple science, simple physics to explain God. And so that was my reluctance, was because I didn't feel like I wasn't scientific enough, right? Because I'm not a scientist, I'm an engineer, actually, my background. But I just took enough physics, which is, just physics 101. I took enough physics to get me in trouble, to understand what's going on. So.
And you said that you struggled with it because you thought that you wouldn't be scientific enough.
Yes.
Did you, before you wrote the book, did you think that was going to change the way you envisioned the book?
Well, once I started writing the book, and I kept, asking, like, the way engineers' brains work, they ask questions. They ask a lot of questions, and that's my background. When I don't understand something, But the difference is I ask God questions and I teach people, you got to ask the big questions. And that's what I was doing. And the answers would come to me that helped me. If you want me to write this book, God, you better tell me what to write. And I'm kind of like, okay, so it
Okay,
just
yeah.
came out like that, like it was developed with him on my, kind of guiding me along the way. And if I didn't understand, once I got 100%, like I said, I was able to explain it, all the questions what was in my mind is actually what most people are asking themselves too, the issues that most people have. And I just kind of answered them because I asked the difficult questions, and I would not write anything down till I got it. I'm like, oh, that's it. Because my brain had science and all these religion in my brain, and I was like, how do you consolidate all this mess, And
So I'm sure it took a lot of organizing for you to put your thoughts together in a way that made sense.
Yes. Because they're kind of contradictory, what we're taught in education and what we're taught in religion. There's a lot of contradictions, and that was a big problem for me. That's why it took so long.
Okay, I see. So it kind of seems like one of the struggles that you had was taking the contradictory views and showing the reader that they're actually very much alike.
The same, yes. We're just looking at them from different views. I even explained, the scientists who believe in evolution and religious people who believe in creation. And I realized when I was looking at it, deeply, I'm like, oh, okay, there's creation here. It starts with creation, and after that, everything evolved. So they work best together when they're together, not as separate. But they fight because they're like, no, evolution just means growth. The meaning of evolution, and another word for evolution, is growth. Well, when you look at a tree, when you grow a baby, it grows from a seed and it grows. Well, it's evolution. All of us are evolving. And so that's all evolution is. You take that definition of evolution, it just means growth. Yeah, everything grows. And at the beginning, creation, the beginning, which scientists call the Big Bang theory. Well, the Bible says, oh, in the beginning was word. Well, words are sound. Well, the Big Bang, they're looking at it from the when you hear a gunshot, for example, there's two things that are happening. There's the shot itself, the bang, and then the sound. So the religious people are talking about the sound, and then the scientist is describing the explosion. So, but they're both happening at the same time, and so there really is no difference, like if I were to tell you, like, I'm sure you've heard of somebody, of somebody shooting a gun, for example. Most people will hear the noise before they see the bang, the explosion itself. So one is describing the explosion, one is talking about the sound, and so there's no difference. So I merged thoughts like that they're better, that one's not right, one's not wrong, they're both right. Coming from different perspectives,
Right, and especially considering their slightly contradicting views, depending on how you look at it, it can be very confusing for the reader.
Yes. So I explain all that, and then, that there's no reason to, argue.
Yeah, definitely. I just have a couple more questions for you before we wrap this up.
Uh-huh.
Are you pleased with the general outcome of your book? Or would you change anything if you were given the chance?
I'm 95% pleased. In fact, I'm in the middle of revising my book right now because I'm adding some stuff. The book itself, the information, I love. I'm happy with it, but I'm only getting a 4.5 to 5 star, and I want a 5 star. I'm sorry. Okay.
I
So,
understand, yeah. And that actually
it's
kind of led me to my next question. I wanted to ask how you plan to build onto this book for the future, and I wanted to ask if you could briefly share some plans with us without spoiling anything.
well, I'm actually in the middle of re-editing it because my first editor didn't do a good job. I feel like there's one of the reviews I got was, this could have been done by if this was done by professional editor, it could have been better. That I get that kind of comment, and so I'm revising it. I'm having another editor review it, and I'm adding a few more stuff just to do a second edition of my book, and so to improve it, because I'm trying to get it at a 5%, a 5 star. And so, yeah, I think I'm hoping this editor will do a better job than the first one.
Yeah, definitely. I really hope so too. I'm wishing you the best of luck.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have any other book-related thoughts or remarks you'd like to touch on?
Well, for anybody who's listening, everybody, please buy my book. Please read it. Because I know that it can help you make sense out of this chaotic world, and how to make sense out of it, and how to have mental peace, and how to find love and happiness. So my book teaches about love, and to have mental peace. Because I know how stressful it is if you don't, the world is the way, if you're just operating from the object level and not know how to use your mind at 100%, properly, because we're not taught. And so I don't blame anybody. My like my ex-boyfriend who killed himself, committed suicide. I'm trying to help stop some of that stuff, and who was stuck with a negative thought that he was a mistake, and that my daughter, she almost had about 8 months ago, she won't read my book, so she's like, oh, you're just mom. So, but like my daughter, she almost killed herself. She's 30 years old. She almost had a stroke at work, and because she just started this new job, and she was having a panic attack because she kept hearing one of the girls that gives her work. She was complaining to their boss that, see, you shouldn't have hired her. And she was like, she would call me every day, Mom, they're gonna fire me. Mom, they're gonna fire me. And I kept saying, Grace, please stop thinking so much. Please, please, please. You're gonna hurt yourself. No, they're gonna fire me. They're gonna fire me. She was having panic attacks at work. And so I get a call from her one day saying, Mom, I didn't feel so good this morning. And you know what happened? I went to the urgent care, and the doctor said to me, I can't believe you're still alive. Her blood pressure was so high. Wow. From the panic attack. And she almost killed herself. So I'm hoping to save people. Read my book.
Yeah, using your book to help people from situations like that. I see.
Yes. And it's our thinking. We're killing ourselves. We're out of control. We don't know how to control the thoughts, our minds. And that's what my book is all about. So I'm hoping to save lives.
I see. That's all the questions I have for you today. So thank you so much for meeting with me and talking about your book.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Nicole, for interviewing me. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to Authors Press, either via phone number or email, and we're always here to help.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You have a nice day and stay safe.
Okay, you too.
This has been Aura McClain and Nicole Richardson. Thanks so much for tuning in.